What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Hope everybody's having a great day or night whenever you're watching this. I want to preview the Boston Celtics and Golden State Warriors NBA Finals series that is coming up in a couple days. Before I get into it, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And if you enjoy this kind of content, please like the video. But with all that being said, let's dive right into it. I think the series is going to be really, really competitive. And I was happy that Boston made it out of the East because I felt like they could give Golden State a tougher opponent. And I want to go through the matchups and kind of break down how I think this series can go and who I think will win, who's going to win these matchups, why they're so important, and whatnot. So, starting off with the point guard, you got Steph Curry versus Marcus Smart, and there's a little bit of a backstory here because when Steph Curry injured his foot earlier in the season, towards the end of the season, Marcus Smart was the one that was partially to blame for that injury. He was the one that dove for the ball. So there's a little bit of backstory that I haven't heard anybody talk about lately, and because I didn't think the play was dirty, the ball was loose, dive for the ball, whatever. But this is, I guess you might be able to say it's a little bit of revenge for Steph for getting injured against Marcus, and Marcus is a defensive player of the year. This is the best point guard in the league, and Steph Curry versus the defensive player of the year. I think that's an interesting matchup in its own right because this is the best defender and the best offensive point guard that we've seen in years. So I think the advantage goes to Curry in that case because usually the better offensive player against the great defensive player of the offense usually wins. I do think Marcus has his hands full, and I think he's probably going to play a great role in this series. But I think Steph is still going to get his. Next is the shooting guard. You got Klay Thompson versus Jaylen Brown. I personally would take Jaylen Brown over Klay Thompson in this series. I think Klay's been just way too streaky for me to take him over Jaylen. And yes, Jaylen's had some down games and stuff, but I think Klay has had just too many games where it's like 4 for 17, I'm making that number up, but too many inefficient games. And I think Jaylen's a little bit more reliable at this point in his career. But Klay, that being said, Klay could go 2 or 3 games and put up 30 something. I would not be surprised if that happened. I just think that the more likely of the two is that Klay struggles. And I could be wrong. That's completely fine. Next, Andrew Wiggins versus Jayson Tatum. That's probably my favorite matchup to watch in this series. One, because Tatum is my favorite player in the league, and Wiggins has proven that he's an excellent defender. He didn't lock down Luka or anything, but he made life difficult for Luka, and at least made him work for it, and that's all you can ask for. I think this matchup's going to be great. Obviously the advantage goes to Jayson Tatum. He's the better player. But I do think that could make or break this series and how well Wiggins does. Because I think for Golden State, then you have Draymond kind of freelancing out there. You're going to have to use him a lot in help coverage against Tatum and Brown to an extent too. But I think you don't want to put Wiggins on that island because he's not going to have a lot of success in that case. You want to be able to funnel Tatum into Draymond or switch him off because you just don't want to live with Tatum going one-on-one because he's probably going to win. Power forward, that's an interesting one because they play it's kind of a similar role, but not identical because it's Draymond Green versus Al Horford, where Al Horford spaces the floor and spends a lot of his offense out on the perimeter, but he's also a really good help defender and good at paint protection. And Draymond is one of the best defenders of all time, and he runs their offense. He's the captain of their defense. I think that matchup is going to be people aren't going to look at that one a lot. And I think that's going to be one that might decide a game or two because those are the guys going for the loose balls that, might lead their team in rebounding or lead their team in assists. Like you can see a game where Al Horford has 14, 15 rebounds like he did in the last season. You could see a game where Draymond has 10 assists. There's a lot of uniqueness to that matchup in particular. I give the advantage to Draymond in that case. I think he does a little bit more than Al does in terms of Al's not expected to be the best defender on the floor. He's not expected to make all the reads on the offense. I think that concept is different. So I take Draymond in that case. Center matchup. This one's a fun one. Kevon Looney, who's been a beast in the playoffs so far, and against Robert Williams III. I think Robert Williams is the better player. I think he's a better lob threat. I think he's a better paint protector. And I think rebounding, you can kind of go in between on those two because I think Looney's effort is very, very apparent. But I take Robert Williams. I give him the advantage in this. Now, I don't. This is me saying if he's healthy, and if his knee is okay, if he's able to be majority of what he normally is. But if he's hobbled, then you're obviously probably going to go towards Looney. But I still think Robert Williams can make different things happen in terms of switching. And Kevon's a good switch pick too, but switching out onto a guy like Steph and at least competing against him. If the roles were reversed, you're not gonna. I don't think Kevon's gonna be able to switch out onto Steph. Personally, that's just me, like hypotheticals. I think the biggest difference for this series for Looney is he's not. It's not the Mavs anymore. And yes, Looney was great against the Grizzlies, who have bigs that can rebound, but this is not the Mavs where they don't have a center at all, and this is the Celtics where you have Robert Williams, you have Al Horford, you have Jayson Tatum. They have a lot of bigger guys that cover more ground and get rebounds. So I think that's going to make Looney's job a little bit harder, which really it's going to determine how important he is in this series if he's able to make an impact on the glass, because it's going to be hard to do that because Boston is a very, very solid rebounding team. So I'm very interested to see how Looney makes his impact in this series and how effective he can be. Because like I said earlier, I think he's really good switching. So I think he's going to get some opportunities out there because the Celtics are going to probably try and switch on to him and realize that might not always be a matchup you want to attack. Now you got the bench. You got Jordan Poole versus Derek White. I think the advantage goes to Jordan Poole, but I think there's a very, very thin line here because I think the Celtics, if they're smart, every time Jordan Poole's on the floor, you have to hunt him on defense, hunt him out, because his defense in that last round was just atrocious. So I think that's going to determine how effective and how many minutes Jordan Poole gets to play is how effective he can be on defense. Because if I'm Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, or even Derek White in this case, and I have Jordan Poole on me, I'm going at him every single time. And you're going to see they're going to try and put him in a lot of screens. It's going to be him and Steph. They're going to be Steph's a better defender than Poole is. I think Steph's at least a respectable defender now. Poole has not reached that at all. And I think that's going to determine, how important is his offense if he puts up 20 but gives up 25. I think that's a very, very important thing that we have to pay attention to here, because yes, Jordan Poole is electric. He's a great offensive player, but for Boston I think there's an opportunity where they might be able to render him useless or ineffective because the defense has been so bad. So if Poole can step up his defense, that's going to be a huge improvement. And I think that gives him a better chance, but he's really going to have to be effective on offense, I think, to really stay on the floor in this series. Golden State is the deeper team, but the only thing with their depth is I'm not sure what to expect from some guys because they did have some injuries like Otto Porter. I think it was his knee. Andre Iguodala has been out basically like the entire postseason. Gary Payton II has been out since the Memphis series. He's supposed to come back sometime in this series. I don't know if it's game one, but so I do kind of wonder the rest of Golden State's bench. I know they have Bielitsa, Juan Toscano Anderson, Moses Moody, Kuminga. I don't know how much you trust those guys in a final series, but I mean, they did get some PT in the Western Conference Finals. So I think that there is a little bit of rapport there. But I think if you're Kerr, you're probably rolling 7 or 8 man rotations. Like you probably trust about 7 to 8 guys on the team. I think you would trust Curry, Klay, Wiggins, Draymond, Looney, Poole to an extent. I think you would trust Iggy because he's been there. And then after that, it gets a little bit, you're kind of seeing which guys have it and which guys don't. So I'm very curious to see how Golden State's injuries kind of play out. And I think that Golden State is a deeper team, and that's why I think that they have a better chance of probably winning this series, because the Celtics do have injuries to 2 very critical players in Marcus Smart and Robert Williams. They're in my opinion, their 2 best defenders, and those guys being hobbled, who knows how that wears down. They've been through a lot already for this postseason. So I think that Golden State's depth might overwhelm them a little bit. But that being said, I would not be surprised if those guys played through those injuries and were still just as effective. Unsung hero for the Celtics against the Bucks, especially in that Game 7, Grant Williams. I think he's going to be more playable in this series because Golden State is not a smash mouth team. They're more flair. They like to get their threes up, but they're not going to post you up like Jimmy Butler would or Giannis would and bang into your chest over and over and over again and create fouls that way. So I think Grant has a little bit more effectiveness in this series because he is able to switch on to different players on Golden State. He is able to rebound. So I think Grant Williams is going to have a bigger impact in this series. I think that's my personal opinion. I think that's how logically I would expect that to play out, because like I said, they don't really have the guys like Giannis, like Jimmy Butler that are going to go into you all the time. Here's how each team I think can win. I think Boston, their way of winning, they have to continue switching everything. You can't play drop coverage against Steph Curry. Boston doesn't play a lot of deep drop anyway, but I think switching is going to be They've been doing it at an extremely high rate, pretty much since the new year. So I think switching is going to be the way to handle Golden State's offense. I think the biggest thing here is Boston has to win the rebounding battle because they are the bigger team, and you can't because Golden State's a really, really good rebounding team. They, as a collective unit, they get after the boards. So I think if Boston's able to win the rebounding matchup, they have a lot higher chance. And I think with the switching, if they're able to force Golden State into more ISO offense, because I Golden State's at its best when it's free flowing, it's fast, and the ball is moving. But I think if you're able to get Steph Curry or Klay Thompson or Wiggins or Poole to be more ISO reliant than they are on like the team aspect of the game, Boston has a lot better chance of winning if they can get that for majority of the game, where you kind of get Golden State out of its rhythm, because Golden State has not a knack, but like a bad habit of playing too fast sometimes and turning the ball over. And I think if Boston's at their best when they're able to turn teams over and get into transition, because I think their offense is just light years better in transition and like a more fast paced flow rather than half court, draw up some offense and roll off the pick and rolls, making whatever sets you want to roll with. Boston is better at being in transition than they are at that. So I think Golden State, for them to win, they got to limit their turnovers, because you don't want Boston to get out in transition, get easy threes, easy layups, and allow them to get back on defense, because it's a lot harder for Golden State to play that free-flowing offense when you're getting the ball out of the net rather than off the glass. So I think that's a big difference. And like I said, for Boston to win, I think they got to try and force Golden State into more ISO offense. For Golden State to win, they got to avoid being in that ISO offense. You don't want to be living and dying by Steph having to create everything. You want to be rolling off screens, running back doors, cutting, doing all that good stuff that got you here. So I think if Golden State's able to do that for the majority of the games, that they have a lot better chance. Now, defensively for Golden State, I think it's simple, but who knows how effective it's going to be. I think with Wiggins and Draymond, you have to trap Tatum or anybody else, whoever, because Wiggins is probably going to be the primary guy, and I think Draymond secondary. You have to trap Tatum on every screen. I think you have to force him to make those reads, and I think you're better off living and dying with other guys beating you. It's kind of like trap and then rotate and force the other guys to hit shots, because you don't want to let Tatum play one-on-one all game, because it's more than likely not going to work out too well in your favor. So I think getting the ball out of his hands and giving kind of the way that they used to play James Harden, where they would trap him high, force him to make the first read. Only difference is I think Tatum moves off the ball, so he's going to work to try and get it back. But I think that they can run something like that at him and make it to where try and make him uncomfortable. Because I think if Tatum gets comfortable, the games are going to be a lot tighter, and it's going to be a lot harder for Golden State, because if he gets comfortable, then it's what do you do at that point? He can hit every shot. He can take every shot. You got to make Jayson Tatum uncomfortable. Jaylen Brown is another part of the Celtics that you really have to worry about, but I would not be as scared of it. I think you can kind of play a little bit one-on-one. Like I would personally think Klay is not going to see a lot of time on Tatum. I think Klay is going to spend a lot of time on Jaylen Brown. I think he can be more effective defensively that way. But that matchup, especially with Klay and Jaylen Brown, I think that's the big deal, is who wins that one. I think whoever wins that one might sway the series. If Klay is able to play better than Jaylen, like I said, I had Jaylen as the advantage. If Klay is able to win that, I think the series is probably over quicker than a lot of people think. My prediction for the series, I got Golden State in 6 or 7. I think that they're the more deep team. They're healthier a little bit. I think they're more well rested, and they've been there before, the experience factor. So I have them in 6 or 7. What I'm personally hoping for, though, is completely different. I'm hoping Tatum wins. Because that's my guy. It's my favorite player in the league. I'm hoping he's able to lead them and get Boston get the chip. But logically, I'm thinking Golden State in 6 or 7 is probably more likely. But if Tatum wins, I'll be so damn happy. So damn happy. But anyway, so I do have personal bias for him, but I'm trying to look at that logically and unbiased and how I think that series is likely to go. It's probably Golden State in 6 or 7, but it is the NBA Finals. Things can happen. Injuries happen. Things can change like it's like that. So we'll see what happens. This is before game 1. Let me know, Golden State Warriors fans, Celtics fans, who you think is going to win this series. What do you think about these matchups? Who's going to win these matchups? If you want to interact with me on Twitter, I'm going to put it like right in here, like I always do. I'll be live tweeting probably every game in the series. I love watching the finals, and I think this is going to be a close, contested 6 or 7 games. And I think whoever wins this series, because I think it is Golden State, but if Boston does win, it's 6 or 7 games. I don't see this as a sweep for anybody. I don't see this as a 5-game series. I think both teams are too great on defense and have too much star power to let that happen. So if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, please like it. I always appreciate that. Love it. Thank you very much. Man, this finals is going to be great. I'm done here. Peace.